Days and weeks to come, we're also looking at additional measures, including around immigration. Aujourd'hui, je suis très heureux d'être à Moisson-Montréal avec le député de Gatineau,
with the MP for Gatineau, Steve McKinnon. I have just been meeting with exceptional volunteers working at this food bank, and I want to thank them for their work. I also had a discussion with Diane and Armand, the CEO of Moisson-Outaouais, and they talked about the problems they have been facing in this crisis. Because of the pandemic, more people are asking for help from food banks, and like many organizations across the country, Moisson-Outaouais needed some help to adapt to that new reality. Our government therefore invested $100 million to support food banks across Canada, such as this one, to allow them to continue to do their essential work. For Moisson-Outaouais, that funding allowed them to hire more drivers to carry out deliveries and buy more food.
Canadians have come together to help each other and keep each other safe. It's taken a lot of hard work and many sacrifices, but it's starting to pay off. We are controlling the spread of the virus. And because the situation continues to improve, we can now pick up where we left off on many of the things we had to put on hold over the spring. As a first step, we're moving forward on 92 infrastructure projects in British Columbia under the Investing in Canada plan. All told, these investments amount to $150 million and will create good, well-paying jobs right across BC. I'd like to thank Premier Horgan for his support and partnership throughout this process. It just goes to show that by working together, we can continue to create jobs and build stronger, healthier communities. As
we continue to reopen the economy, our government's priority is to help to build stronger communities, more prosperous communities, and part of that work is to help people return to work. Right across the country, there are many businesses using the emergency wage subsidy to rehire their employees. Overall, we're talking about 2.8 million employees who have returned to their position as a result of that program. And through other initiatives, such as the Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program and the Canada Emergency Business Account, we are helping businesses that are at the heart of our economy. But we know there's still a lot of work to be done.
I can announce that our government is taking yet another step to help Canadians get the training and support they need to find good, well-paying jobs. As part of our annual funding, we're investing $40 million over 3 years in the Union Training and Innovation Program. Skilled tradespeople are a vital part of our workforce. They build our towns, our cities, our communities, and they will play an important role as we restart the economy. This pandemic has been an unprecedented challenge for our country. And as I've said right from the start, our response to COVID-19 will evolve as the situation changes. Next week, I'll be hosting a 2-day virtual cabinet retreat. This will be an opportunity to map out our approach going forward to keep Canadians healthy and safe and keep our economy strong. We will also discuss how we can make our country more resilient to potential future waves of the virus. Of course, COVID-19 is not the only challenge that Canada faces, so this retreat will be a chance to move forward on addressing systemic discrimination and systemic racism. Next week, our government will also be releasing an economic and fiscal snapshot. This report, which Minister Morneau will present to Parliament on Wednesday, will give Canadians a picture of where the economy is right now, how our response compares to that of other countries, and what we can expect in the months to come. Speaking of next week, let me also remind people who receive old age security benefits and the guaranteed income supplement that you will see an increase in your benefits this coming week. In May, we announced this one-time boost of $300 for OAS and $200 to the GIS. Together, this means if you get both benefits, you'll receive an additional $500.
I also want to remind all of you who receive old age security and the guaranteed income supplement that their benefits will increase next week. In May, we announced that people would receive $300 more for the OAS and $200 more for the guaranteed income supplement. This is only one example of the way we're supporting seniors when they need support. Before closing, I would just like to take a moment to point out that next Monday will mark the 7th anniversary of the Lac Mégantic disaster. It will be a difficult day for many people. In recent years, the Lac Mégantic community has shown such strength and resiliency. So as we remember the people who were lost, we must stand with those people who were affected by this tragedy.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll go to the phones first for questions. One question, one follow-up. Operator.
Thank you, merci. Première question, Marie-Vastel Le Devoir, à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. I'd like to come back to the Air Canada issue that we've been talking about for some time. In the spring, there was some talk of sectoral assistance, and Air France, for example, received a $10 billion envelope. And there have been changes that affect regional connections and so forth. Are you considering providing an envelope of support for the airlines? And would one of the conditions be to maintain regional services? Well, right from the beginning, we have understood that certain industries and sectors of the economy would be harder hit than others by this pandemic and the associated economic crisis. That's why, right from the beginning, we were working to help workers throughout the economy, but also introduce measures that could be necessary for certain sectors. And we continue to work with the airline industry and the aeronautics industry, which are very important areas of economic development for the country. At the same time, of course, we're disappointed by Air Canada's decision to cut services to certain regions of the country. We know that Air Canada has the most profitable connections in the country, but we also expect it to serve people who live in the more remote regions. So this is something that we're hoping they can restore as we move forward and the economy recovers. A follow-up, Marie? Yes. Well, how will you ensure that Air Canada continues to serve the regions? I understand that you want to remain vague, but for 3 days we haven't heard anything from your government. People are concerned. Some people are talking about creating a Quebec regional airline. Are you open to any of those options? And are you opening to supporting a Quebec solution, or are you looking at more of a Canadian or federal solution, since there are other connections that exist elsewhere? Now, obviously, Marie, this pandemic has hit many sectors very hard, as well as many companies. We all have to make adjustments, but it is important that Canadians who live in every region of the country be properly served by our airlines. I think that what is hitting Quebec or affecting Quebec will also affect the Maritimes and other areas of the country. So this is something we're looking at with Air Canada and other airlines, and we hope they will restore those services soon.
Thank you, merci. Prochaine question, Catherine Lévesque, La Presse canadienne, à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. I'd just like to continue along the same lines because you didn't really answer. The Quebec government has talked about setting up its own company to deal with the services that Air Canada has abandoned. Would the federal government be prepared to support that? Well, during this pandemic and during the reopening of our economy, we will have to adjust the way we do things because of the current crisis, of course, but also also for the future. There are things that will change, and we will be working with other levels of government, with specific industries, including the airline industry, to see how we can fulfill immediate needs, but also have a more resilient and stronger country, and one that is fair in the years to come.
Et puis,
Yes.
tout à fait, sur un autre sujet,
On another subject, the government announced this morning that you are cutting your ties with the We charity for the Canada Student Service Grant Program. Why did you make that decision? Was there a conflict of interest between you and that group? The group We Charity decided to withdraw from that program with the government, and we support that decision. Now, the way that this unfolded was disappointing. We continue to be firmly engaged in supporting young people across the country. We saw tens of thousands of young people say present when it came to getting involved in their communities around the country, and we will continue to work with them. But it will not be through the We charity.
Obviously, the way this situation has unfolded has been unfortunate. We will continue to work hard to make sure that young people get the opportunities to serve their country, but it will no longer be with the organization We.
Thank you. Next question, operator.
Thank you, merci. Next question, John Paul Tasker, CBC News. Line open.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Yes, a number of people in the charitable sector have questioned your assertion that We was the only group with the nationwide reach to distribute these grants to students, and some have said that's just simply not true. Do you stand by that statement, or do you think now that other options should have been considered for this program?
Well, we are going to be moving forward with government itself delivering directly these grants. Certainly there are certain things that we will not be able to do as government delivers this program directly. Reaching out to actively search and pull in volunteers was something that the We organization could do because of its extensive network and practice, as well as support in training and onboarding volunteers so that smaller organizations, for example, could ensure that we're giving the best possible experience to Canadians. That was something that We was ready to do that government isn't necessarily best positioned to do, but we're going to continue to work with partners across the country and within government to make sure that these young people who've been stepping up right across the country at a time of COVID, but year in, year out, to try and contribute to the well-being of their community and their country, continue to get those opportunities to make a difference in their communities.
Of course, we will continue to ensure that young people can obtain positive experiences this summer. That's why we believe that We Charity had the right capacity when it comes to training and proactively finding partners across the country. It will be more difficult for the government to do that, but I guess somebody leaned against a wall. Anyway, we will certainly continue to work very hard to ensure that young people across the country can have a positive experience this summer.
JP, follow-up.
Yeah, you said a couple weeks ago when this was first announced that you and your family will continue to work with We. You know, you've been to a number of their events over the years. Your wife hosts a podcast for them. I believe your mother's also been involved. Given today's development, will that work continue, or will you cut ties with We altogether?
All my life, I have been involved in supporting young people, in encouraging young people's implication. My chairing of the board of Katimavik, Canada's once a national youth service organization, was part of what brought me into politics. And as a young MP, my role was consistently to be that of youth critic. So I will continue to stay active in empowering young people and giving them the opportunities to be leaders of today, not just leaders of tomorrow. I will continue to work with a range of organizations to support them in what they do. As for We, I think the organization is going to take some time to reflect on its next steps and how exactly it responds to this situation. But I will always be there to support young people, as I'm sure will be my family. Okay. Ça fait des années que je m'implique
For
auprès
years
des
now,
jeunes.
I have been involved with young people. I did work with Katimavik, which actually prompted me to run for politics. I was also the youth critic for my party, and this is something that is very important to me, and I've always been involved with the youth of Canada, and I will always make the youth of Canada a priority and support organizations that do good work right across the country to help young people and others. Now, certainly, the We charity organization will have to engage in some reflection and some decisions about what its future looks like, but I will continue and my family will continue to support the work that has a positive impact on young people around Canada and the world.
And one more question on the phone. Operator?
Thank you, merci. Next question, Steve Shearer, Reuters. Line open.
Hello, Prime Minister. I wanted to ask, you were invited to go to Washington next week to meet with President Trump and Mexican President Obrador. I wanted to know what your answer was going to be to that invitation and what went into your decision.
We're still in discussion with the Americans about whether a trilateral summit next week makes sense. We're obviously concerned about the proposed issue of tariffs on aluminum and steel that the Americans have floated recently. We're also concerned about the health situation and the coronavirus reality that is still hitting all three of our countries. We're going to continue to work with the U.S. on seeing whether that summit makes sense for us. And we will let you know as soon as we've made a decision.
Follow up, Steve?
Yeah, if you were to go, would you have to self-isolate for 2 weeks when you return?
These are obviously the conversations that we're having both with the Americans and with public health officials here in Canada, but I can assure you that at all times we will follow all the rules and all the advice of public health.
Certainly, the discussions are continuing with the Americans on the possibility of a trilateral summit next week. But of course, we intend to follow all the public health rules if we decide to travel to the United States.
Bill Curry from the Globe and Mail here, Mr. Trudeau. Hi. Could you just clear up? You had suggested that this we arrangement was cancelled because of we's decision, but was it also the government's decision? And then more broadly, in light of all the issues that have come up over the past week, resignations of key members from the board, it's been revealed they had a lot of layoffs there. So do you take any responsibility for the lack of due diligence, perhaps, or any concern about the lack of due diligence that went into the government choosing this route?
I think, first of all, the decision taken by we this morning to withdraw from this work with the government is one that we support. Secondly, obviously this situation unfolded in a way that is truly unfortunate because one of the things that ends up happening with this is that young people won't maybe have the same kind of access to programs that we would have. We will continue to work very hard, and we need to reflect carefully on what exactly went wrong and how we can make sure that we're doing a better job of supporting young people in the coming months and years. Certainly, the work that we're doing will continue for young people, but it'll continue in a slightly different way. But I still want to encourage young people who want to help out, who want to serve in their community, to step up, to sign up on the website, and to take advantage of the many, many opportunities that government and other organizations will be working on to make sure that young people are at the heart of the recovery and the fight against this pandemic. We
will continue to ensure that young people have access to opportunities that will allow them to get involved. We will have to look as well at how we can deliver better programs for young people without attracting controversies such as this one. But the point is we have to continue to invest in young people and youth organizations so that our young people can have as much impact as possible in this recovery and in the fight against COVID.
National news. In the news release, we said that this was a mutual decision, but it sounds like they seem to pull out here. So do you think your personal ties with we and the Kielburgers made them pull out of this contract?
I think one of the things that has been clear is that for years I have been deeply involved in a range of organizations and events that support young people. I've been youth critic since I first got elected by my party back in 2008. I was Minister of Youth until I handed it over last year to Minister Bartas-Chagger, who's doing an extraordinary job. And we're going to continue as a government making sure that there are opportunities for young people to be at the heart of the recovery through this pandemic, of the fight against this pandemic. Obviously, there are things to reflect on. There are ways to do it better. But that core principle of being a government that is there to support young people and to work with partners across the country to make sure that young people are able to get the opportunities, the experience, and the service to their country at this time is continuing to be extremely important.
We will continue to ensure that young people have the opportunity to serve their communities and do this right across the country. For years now, I have been working with young people. It is a priority for our government, and we will continue to ensure that they have proper opportunities.
Bonjour, Juliane Lapointe de Radio-Canada.
Radio-Canada. You defended that organization, though, in recent weeks, saying that it was the best one to carry out this project. So how is it that you're changing your mind today? Is there something that led to this? And how? Well, obviously, with the decision made by the We Charity this morning, they decided that it was no longer in their interest to deliver that program for the government, and we support that decision. We will continue to try and provide positive opportunities for young people across the country. This is something that means a great deal to me, and it means a great deal to people across the country. So we want young people to continue to get involved.
Obviously, we're going to continue to work to ensure that young people have opportunities to serve right across the country. This is something that will change a bit with WE's decision, which we support. But we're going to make sure that we're continuing to deliver real opportunities for young people to make a difference right across the country in their communities in fighting this pandemic and also building back a stronger economy and a better future.
Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister. Christopher Nardi from National Post. In an audio recording that National Post obtained from a few weeks ago, Mark Kielburger, co-founder of We, is heard saying that your office reached out to him a few days after the program was announced and asking them to help implement it. Did you or anyone in your office at any point reach out to them asking them to help implement this program?
We knew from the beginning that because of work that has been ongoing between this government and we, that this was a decision that needed to be made by our professional public service. They made the decision in a transparent and open way, in a rigorous way, to ensure that we had the right partnerships to move forward on this opportunity for young people. We're going to continue to work to make sure that young people have the opportunities they need right across the country.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Stephanie Levitz, the Canadian Press. You spoke earlier about the national economic recovery, and parents have said, that is impossible if they don't have full-time care for their kids. At the same time, governments seem awfully focused on getting NHL players back on the ice. Will you direct the provinces to spend any of that $14 billion to make sure that school boards, teachers have the space, the staffing, the PPE that they need to get kids in full-time care?
Yes. One of the conditions around those $14 billion that we're offering to provinces for a safe restart of the economy is directly focused on childcare, directly focused on making sure that young people, including kids over the age of 6, have access to spaces and supports in a safe way. We know that we cannot restart the economy if parents aren't confident that their kids are going to be safe and well cared for. That's why we've made it a condition of that $14 billion that the provinces need to strengthen their response on childcare for preschool ages, but also for 6+. That's why we hope that the provinces will agree to take this money and make these investments as quickly as possible, because families are facing these decisions right now. Okay.
Yes, this is a condition attached to the $14 billion we're offering for a safe reopening of the economy, money we're offering to the provinces, and that the provinces should invest in spots for young people so that parents can return to work. It's not just childcare centers, but we're also talking about older children above the age of 6 that will need programs as well if we want the economy to reopen. So I truly hope that the provinces will agree to take that money and help Canadians directly in that manner.
Minister Chris Lowe with Global News. What was your reaction to the news yesterday that an armed man broke into the grounds of Rideau Hall? And as you have lived on the grounds for a long period of time, have you ever felt it needs to be more secure?
Obviously, this was something that nobody wants to hear, but I want to thank the extraordinary members of the police services and the RCMP who did their job, and nobody was hurt, nobody was injured. Any further questions, obviously, I will refer to the RCMP on that. Okay.
Of course, this is not something that anyone wants to hear, that someone entered your home, but I want to extend my sincere thanks to the RCMP and the Ottawa Police Service that did a remarkable job in ensuring that there were no injuries as a part of this incident. And for any other question, I will refer you to the RCMP.
The world did nothing to stop it. China has now effectively taken unprecedented control over Hong Kong, and the world has done nothing to stop this either. The Canadian government has sanctions on Russian and Ukrainian officials and entities over the Crimea seizure. Why are you refusing to sanction any Chinese entities or officials for this blatant violation of the one country, two systems policy?
Well, sort of, as you pointed out, where you were wrong was we actually did things when Russia seized Crimea. We kicked them out of the G7, turned it from the G8 to the G7, and we brought in significant sanctions against Russia. We are extremely concerned about the situation in Hong Kong. We will continue to look at responses, working closely with our allies, including our Five Eyes allies, who have made very strong statements in regards to the decision by the Chinese government to move forward and weaken the one country, two systems principle that is so important, not just to us, but to the 300,000 Canadians who live in Hong Kong and to the millions of people who live in Hong Kong. That's why we're going to continue to look at steps we can take to ensure the safety of its citizens. Okay.
We're very concerned about the situation in Hong Kong, and that's why we immediately took steps to talk about our concerns with what China has been doing, and we are continuing our discussions with allies around the world with a view to expressing our disagreement with China's decision. We will also be looking at other measures that will point out our disapproval of their suspending the one country, two system principle in Hong Kong. We believe it should remain in place. Thank you very much, everyone.